For many years, Rainbow Hospice has been privileged to offer the Good Mourning Program to the communities where we serve. We are so proud of this program because of all of the young children and their families that we are able to tenderly care for after they have experienced the unimaginable. Rainbow Hospice provides many services to the community that nobody ever pays us for and we never get reimbursed for, and they are the things that distinguish our organization as such a unique and special organization in Chicagoland. There is no program like the Good Mourning Program in Chicago.
When I think about those early beginnings, and then I realize that the snapshot is 20 years later. Good Mourning is the most comprehensive and longest running program for bereaved children and their families in the Chicagoland area. That now we provide a monthly support group, and it's no longer just for children, it's also for the adults who are affected by the loss. There are short-term groups which meet once a week for a period of 8 weeks. There's a family camp every year, a 2-day family camp, a holiday gathering around December. That there's a grief in school program that's allowed us to go into schools and work, provide education, and also advocacy and support for bereaved families. That all of this has happened, and that the head count is almost 3,000 children served by the Good Mourning Program.
I think Good Mourning has changed over the years in its depth, in its thoroughness, in its breadth in terms of numbers of people that we've been able to serve. I think we've grown to understand how to access grief and how to help folks transform that better and better over time. I think we have done a lot of great work to make tangible certain projects and certain experiences so that families can come together around grief, and that has just been a complete commitment that's grown over time.
When we look at what does grief do to children, it changes everything in their lives, depending on who it is who's died, be it a parent or sibling or grandparent. The child's first response is, who will take care of me? And that's not selfish. It's how we're made for survival. Children need that restored sense of security in the midst of those changes. And the changes often are not only the person who died, but the roles they played in the family. Also, children often grow up quicker and sometimes find themselves out of sync with their peers. Their sense of priorities change. So they don't kind of have time for trivial concerns. Losing your phone as opposed to losing your father is quite different. Huh?
Grief in teenage time. It's a pretty interesting phrase even, because teenage time is loaded with all of the physical and emotional and sometimes spiritual growth that's going on. Kids, just everything is changing physically and emotionally as their brains are developing, bodies are developing, everything. So when you have the experience of grief on top of that, it is so particularly stressful. It's stressful in a particular kind of way that's hard to fathom unless you've experienced it.
I can remember a story about a young man. He was a little kid, I'd say about 6 years old, and he was at camp. And that year at camp, we had an art therapy resident that was working with us. And the project was to work with the kids on a timeline of their lives. And so the kids had a real long strip of white paper, and they were supposed to draw all the significant things that happened in their lives. My brother was born, the puppy died, whatever was going on in their lives, went to school, made my first communion, whatever it was supposed to be the timeline of their lives. This young man was at camp along with his dad, and his dad had actually remarried since Mom died, and they were all at camp together, and this little guy drew his timeline. So a lot of significant things had happened in his life. Mom had died several years earlier, and he got along on his timeline, And it stopped when Mom died. There was nothing else on his timeline from when Mom died. And it made such an impression on the family. They all, and it was very difficult for the adults to accept that this child did not see anything more for the rest of his life that had happened to put on the timeline. So there was a great deal of distress for the adults. And we had counselors there to support them and to work through that and talk through that. And of course we had counselors to work with the little boy on sort of re-energizing the enthusiasm that he needed for the rest of his life.
Another story that really struck me, and the children are always teaching us because they're the ones doing the work. Certainly a set of twins who were just 4 when Dad completed suicide. And, Mom trying to figure out how do you begin to share that information with 4-year-olds. How do you share it with anybody, right? And having the tools and the language and the way to make some sense of that, and to see those children grow into being able to tell this story about how Daddy was in such pain that he couldn't continue to live in a very positive way, that it was not a sense of abandonment, but recognizing the illness that he struggled with that caused him to do that and evolved in his suicide. And to watch those youngsters grow through that process and now see them at 7 being very compassionate to other children and responsive in helping others is a real gift to see.
Well, I think that the outreach that we're able to provide to the community is very important, and I think having more resources available so that if there's something that happens in a school or something tragic that happens in the community, that we're able to get out there and respond, and that takes resources.
I've been thinking about what kind of direction we might want to go in, and the program has done so much good growth over the past few years. I think it's a natural process for us to do things like publish some of the projects, to make that curriculum available to other people around the country. I'd love to see us be able to be off-site, open up a couple different sites, extend the base of our volunteer support. It's primarily a volunteer program, and so it's really run on the compassion and kindness of folks that will continually show up.
It's everything that happens before the families get to Good Mourning that matters so much, and I'll tell you why. I think it's because the only way that bereaved people can open their hearts and minds to the work of healing is in an atmosphere of complete safety and trust. And the way you create an atmosphere of complete safety and trust is when you're calm and supportive, when every detail is taken care of, where nothing goes wrong. And so that's why all the pre-planning and all the organization is so important. It's not about efficiency. It's not about any of those things. It's about safety. It's about providing that place where families can do this life-changing work. Who can say where the road goes?